Hello everyone, Boss Tutorial is back, and today we'll be talking about a looping statement, which is the for loop, and as well as the while loop. We'll be talking about the basics of for loop and as well as the while loop in this tutorial. And so let's go ahead and start with the for loop itself. Now the for loop starts with the word for, which is, it doesn't make sense if it starts with a different word itself. So since this is a for loop, we'll go ahead and start with the word for. Now for, after the word for, you have to use a variable, which is basically the container for the looping statement itself. So as you may have noticed, the for loop goes with a this is a looping statement that goes through a particular range. So let's go ahead and indicate m for this instance. So for m in range, we'll be using the range function basically to to tell the for loop when to stop. So I wanted to stop the for loop after it reaches 5 values. Now, so basically it will print the same thing. It will print everything down from the for loop, everything 5 times basically. So if I print hello world, let me say for instance I wanted to print hello world, and then it is inside a for loop which is within the range of 5, it'll be giving me 5 hello worlds. Let's go ahead and try to run it. As you can see down below here, we got 5 hello worlds. Now just like what I told you, range will give us the the particular range. Basically the range function will give us the range. When would you like me to stop? How much looping statements would you like me to execute this code below the for loop? Now since it's 5, by default in range, range 5 inside of the range is 5. It's the same as 0 and then 5 and then comma 1. So here's the explanation behind this one. So 0 is the start of our range, and it will stop if we're already given by 5 values basically. So this is where would you like to start? Where would you like to start? And then 5 tells you when would you like to stop? How many values would you like me to actually, how many values would you like me to actually give you? Or where would you like to stop? But since, at the end, it'll be giving us 1, which is the incrementation, positive 1 basically, plus 1. It'll be adding 1 from the value of 0 right here, and then the container of these values are our m. So if I print m basically, so let me say for instance I print the letter m, the values of letter m, just like what I told you, the values that this range will return all the values into our m. So if we print the values of m, it should provide us the value of 0 through 4. 0 through 4, because right here it tells us where to stop. It's just less than 5. It tells us less than 5. Where would you like to start? It's from 0. I would like to start at the index of this particular range this for loop is from 0, and I wanted to increment the 0 just 1. So I want to increment 0 by 1 every time the block of code is executed, and so it'll be giving us the value of 0 through 4. Just like what I told you, this is where would you like to start, when would you like to stop, and then what is the incrementation that you would like to add into the value of m, which is the variable of our for loop. So let's go ahead and try to print it out again. And as you can see, it gives us 2, 3, and 4 because we wanted to start at number 2 and we wanted to stop if it is already less than 5. So that's how simply is the for loop is. I wanted to show you as well how to use the for loop. If you wanted to go through the value of your list. So let me say for instance I got a list here which is the a list, and it is equal to a random list of integer. Let me say 1, 2, 3, 1, 23, 1. This is just a random list that I made, and so this doesn't have any particular it doesn't have any particular meaning or so whatsoever. It's just I just created this list. But this is how you create a list, which is some sort of an array when it comes to Python. And so I wanted to go through all of those, and I want to return the value of that, that list basically. And so I wanted to use for loop as well to go through that list. I mean, you can print this list, but basically, I can print this list just by printing this out, and then print a list, print it out, then it'll show you, and it'll show you it. But if you wanted to get, let me say for instance, you wanted to get one by one, you can use the for loop. All right, so for m in range is equal to a list. No, we're not going to use the range basically. So once again, a range function only accepts it only accepts integers. So if I use range in a list, it will not accept it because I mean, this is integer, but it's a bunch of integer. It's an array of integer basically. It's a list of integer. So our range function will be confused whether which integer should I use. This is a list, for God's sake. All right, so now I wanted to use for loop for m in a list. So basically all of the value in a list, all right, we'll be using all of the value in a list. So let me print the value of m. All right, once again, this is the value, and we want to pass those values to our m variable. So if we print m into this one, it will go through, once again, it will go through the list from 1 to through the last value, which is 1. So if I print m by this instance, it'll be giving me 1, 2, 3, 1, 23, and then 1, which is the array right here, or the list right here. So here you go. Just like what I told you, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 23, 1. But you can use the range function as well to go through this list basically. And how you do it? So by using the range function. So this is, if you're very new to Python, there's another function that we use, which is the len, or the the length function. Basically, it gives us the length of a specific data. So if that is string, it'll be giving you how many characters within the string is. But if that is a list, they'll be providing you, or will be returning you, how many values are inside within the list itself. So by this instance, I wanted to get how many values do we have in a list. You can count it by your fingers basically, but if you want it automatic, you have to use the len function, which will provide you the integer. It will be providing you the integer result. So once again, I told you earlier that the range function only accepts integer, and so we have to use the len function for this one to get how many values do we have in this list basically. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 23, 1. So if I use the len function in a list, that will be giving me 6 of them. So in range of 6, once again, in range of 6. So it's like writing 6 right here, but then again, I use the len function to make it an automatic. Now, for this instance, I wanted to print the value of the a list, but I wanted to use the index. Alright, so index 0, 1, 2, 3, 5. So once again, we'll be stopping at 6. So basically len a underscore list, basically it's equal to 6. Is equal to 6 basically. And so we wanted to go through the a list and indices basically. So a list, this is how you do it. So the list goes with the square brackets basically, and so you wanted to put the index that you wanted to go through it. So I wanted to use the value of the m, since we are talking about a range itself, so it starts with 0 and ends with 5 since it's less than 6. Once again, the default for range, if you put only one number, it gives you an increment of 1 and starts with the number 0. That's how the range function works. Once again, if you only put one number on it. Now, once you print it, it will give you all of the values inside the a list, because m values go through 0 through 5, which is basically all of the index of the a list itself. So that's how you can use the for loop or the for looping statement. Now let's go ahead and move on to our next looping statement, which is the while loop. Now while loop, as what I say, as what they said, is the conditional looping statement basically, because for so long as the condition is met or being met, it goes and continues to actually execute a block of code. So that's how easy it is. So let me say, for instance, we got but the difference, by the way, the difference with a for loop, in a for loop we got m in range, let me say 5, and then we print this block of code, blah blah blah, so whatsoever. So in for loop, it's not really necessary for us to actually it's not really necessary for us to declare m into it's not necessary for us to declare m before we can actually use it. But in if we're going to do the same thing in the while loop, I'm afraid you'll have to declare your variable first before you can actually use it in your while loop, because later on you'll be using that particular variable to actually increment your while loop. So it is necessary for you to actually declare the value first, because you can't use it again without even declaring it first. So let's go ahead and start to declare the value. Let me go ahead and use the letter m as well as our variable name, and so m is equal to 0 will be the start of our while looping statement. So we wanted to do the same thing as well as the same thing as well as the for loop that we created earlier. So while, just like what I told you, it is a conditional looping statement, so we'll have to put a condition or a conditional statement right here after the word while. And so while m is less than 5, so from here you already tell your looping statement where to stop basically, and then you're telling your looping statement where to start as well. So it is easier for you to understand as well that it starts with 0 and then ends when it is equal to 5, or when it is not less than 5 anymore. And so print m. Alright, so for this instance, if I try to run this one, it'll go into a infinite loop basically. And so it will go into a infinite loop because m value is always 0, and 0 is always less than 5, so it will automatically print 0. It will never stop unless you stop your program. And so we want to have an increment for this instance, so I want to add m, since this will be our increment. So m, this is the reason why I told you need to declare the value, to declare your variable first before you actually do the while loop. So m is equal to m plus 1. Basically that's m plus equals 1. It's the same thing. It increments 1. So it increments the value of our m by 1. So if it is 0, it will increment by 1. So the value of m here, after it prints the value 0, it will add 1 here, increment m, which is 0 plus 1. 1 is still less than 5. It continues to execute a block of code until it gets to 5, which is not less than 5 anymore, and so it will skip this block of code and then goes to the next code after your while loop. End of the loop. Alright. So let's go ahead and try to run this one. So it gives us the same result as our for loop earlier, which is 0, 1 through 4, because we stated here that our m starts at 0, and for so long as it is less than 5, it continues to execute a block of code, and once it's done, once the condition is not met, is not being met, and then we'll have to continue it in the next block of code after our for loop. After our while loop. Now here's a what's basically the difference between the for loop and as well as the while loop. Basically, the for loop is limited to a looping statement that goes from, a looping statement that tells you where to start and when to stop. That's how the for loop is basically. And the difference, where, on the other hand, when it comes to the while loop, it's like what I told you. It is a conditional statement. So if the condition is met, go ahead and continue to execute a block of code within our while loop. Now, to give you a better example for the while loop, basically, because I don't want you to give the same example as the for loop as we did earlier. So I'll declare a value once again. A is equal to true. We got a Boolean value here, which is true. So while A is equal to true, basically while our A is still true, I'll be creating a simple program that will let us to actually, that will let the user to actually input something, some sort of a string, for so long as they are typing 1 or so long as they're inputting 1, basically. So if A, right, so basically we'll have to get a input first. So our input container or our input variable is equal to B. So B is equal to, it's just 1 or 0. You can either choose, or so we're not going to compute it anyway, so I'm not going to convert it into an integer. So I'll put input here, and then inside the input you can write anything you want it. So 1 or 0. Alright, so from that point on, we got an if-else statement, a conditional statement, basically after that one, because we'll have to to filter it, whether it is 0, whether it is 1, or whether it is not within 1 or 0. So if it is equal to 1, basically, if our B is equal to if it is equal to 1, if our user input 1, basically our program will start to get another input from our user. So we declared right here, which is C, another input variable, which is the container of the input of the user. And so let's just say input something. Alright, perfect. Now let's go ahead and add. Alright, so I forgot to actually include within this if or this condition that A is equal to true. Alright. Now if C, or let me say for instance, if no, it's actually not necessary anymore, because the value of A is equal to true, so I wanted to delete that, or I wanted to delete that. So else if in Python is elif, so B is equal to 0. So basically if it is 0, we're not going to take any input, we're not going to take any input at all, but we'll have to end this looping statement. So A is equal to false. The Boolean value will be false, which will not meet this particular condition up here in our while loop, and so we'll end the particular program. So let's go ahead and try to, I forget to actually add the else statement. So if they input anything apart from 1 or 0, so let me say for instance they input 3 or any number, or any letter, our program will start to, our program will say, please input 1 or 0 only. Then after they click the enter for this one, after they click the enter for that one, they'll go back into this one. It'll be asking them 1 or 0, basically, since the value of A is still true on this particular block of code. Remember, it doesn't go through here, so our A is never become false. It never became false, so it's always true. If it executed this one, A is still true. It will not go through here, but it goes through here. But if it goes through this particular block of statement, a is equal to false, when it's done, it will stop because a is equal to false, because a is false already. Let's go ahead and try to run this one. So here it is, the first input, 1 or 0. Let's go ahead and try to use 1. Wait, no, I'm sorry for this one, because right here in our condition it says b is equal to 1, which is an integer, but right here we put, this one is an input. Basically it will automatically convert our inputs into an integer. It's either I convert it into an integer, or put a double quotation mark for this one, or a single quote for this one to make it a string. So I convert it into a string. Let's go ahead and try to rerun it. 1 or 0. I put 1, input something. Well, let me just edit this one. I kind of wanted to actually make sure that this is perfect. I don't want to add input something like that. So, alright, 1 or 0. Let's say 1. We wanted to put something. 1 means yes, 0 means no when it comes to computer. So input something. Let me say, for instance, my name, Python, and then 1 or 0 again. Since it's true, it goes right through here. So input something again. So it will be asking you 1 or 0. Let me say, for instance, 1. It'll be asking me again to input something. Let me say, for instance, I want to add my second name, John, and so it goes right through back right here. Now, if you wanted to exit this particular looping statement, once again, it needs to be false, so we'll be using 0, and it exits the code. Now I also added an else statement right here, which, if you actually provide an input that is not between 1 or 0, it will automatically goes through back into your looping statement, which is a. Please input 1 or 0 only, because a is not 1 or 0. So let's go ahead and exit this one. So once again, once your loop is done, basically to show it to you better. So once your loop is done, it will go into the next block of code after your while loop. So let's say I wanted to print hello world at the end of our while loop. So after our while loop is, after our while loop, it will be printing hello world. Let's go ahead and 1 or 0. Let's say 1, input something, my name, Dyther. Let's say another 1, input something. Let's say my second name, John. And then if I go with 0, it will end up the loop, and then we'll print the next code, which is the hello world, basically. So that's pretty much it, and that's pretty much all the basics of our looping statement, which is the for loop and then while loop. And so if you have a specific questions or so whatsoever, feel free to comment it down below, and as well as don't forget to click the subscribe and like button. And so see you again. Goodbye.